Welcome back to the Intel Extreme Masters Gamescom. We are ready to kick it off and get our first match of the entire tournament and our first match of the day underway. Our first player resides in Germany. He's our hometown hero. He's known as Alternate Delphi. Please, everyone at home, clap in front of your computers. Clap, clap. Come on, Delphi. Yeah. Oh, the applause. I can imagine it. It's very big. And our next player, he resides from a little country called Korea. They produce a few okay Starcraft players, and he's one of the better ones of the okay ones. His name is Startail Bomber. Are you guys ready? Fighting. Good luck. I'm going to hand it over to Day 9 and Calaris when they're going to do their jobs very well.
Welcome back to the caster's desk here for the Intel Extreme Masters Gamescom. My name is Kyle Loris.
And I am Day 9, and we are starting off here on the day before Gamescom is publicly open. It's press-only day, but of course, why get away, or excuse me, industry-only day. But why do just 4 days of matches when we can get away with 5?
Very true indeed, very true. And for day 1, we have a ridiculous day. We've already alluded to a little bit of what is going to be going on. We've already talked over it a little bit. But coming up here, we do have indeed Startail's Bomber versus ATN Delphi. Now, TVZ, Bomber, not really been having too much presence as of late.
Yeah.
But he's still a very, very strong hard hitter.
Yeah, it's kind of weird to note that the results of Bomber do not line up with his play at all. I mean, I've even gotten the chance to see a lot of Bomber's private play, and it has been looking just astoundingly good. He is going up against Delphi, who is one of these players who is one of the overshadowed German players. Pretty much everyone thinks of Saka and Hasuabs when you think of Germany, but I'd probably say that, I mean, top 10 German player? How do you feel about Delphi's current skill level?
No, definitely. I mean, Delphi in the EPS in Germany, in terms of national performance, has been performing extremely well. He has 2 finishes here to be able to actually go for that. He has 2 finishes in first place on the EPS qualification process for the summer season of EPS. Aside from that, though, internationally not really had too much representation. So here is really his chance to shine, in essence.
Yeah, and I mean, again, going up against Bomber is just never a fun thing to be doing first round. It is nice that in the open bracket you have the 2 best of 3s, so you can't immediately end up getting knocked out of the tournament in round 1, but there is Bomber on Team Startail, a Red Bull-sponsored athlete, has a ton of GSL success under his belt, even winning a Code A over MVP.
Yeah. Who can forget that? That was fantastic, and I actually really like his headset. I've never seen that headset, but that's fantastic as well. Using fantastic a lot. But yeah, Bomber is one of the players that, in my mind, earlier on in the Korean scene, really kind of pushed the innovation for Terran. He was one of the first players to, for example, do very, very small things like put supply depots like in an arrangement in front of bunkers to be able to just bolster the defenses a little bit more. And especially against Zerg, going up against Delphi, for example, there's no reason you don't do that, to be able to just like negate a lot of the damage that a good amount of the melee units are going to be doing early on. And it can work wonders on maps.
I mean, he's the sort of player who takes the notion of standard stable play and takes it to an extreme with those non-standard techniques that you've been talking about, and I do think that that will be the biggest hurdle for Delphi to hop over.
Indeed, indeed. So we are going to be jumping on into the first game.
I like this motion that you're doing where there's like about to be a meal served before you.
Dude, it's going to be a yummy one. I don't know how else to say it. Bomber versus Delphi to kick things off here for the entire tournament. It's going to be good.
Now, the first map is going to be on Ohana, which is one of these maps that people have kind of been shifting the way they're playing on quite a bit. But for the most part, we see 3-basing aggressive Terrans. How do you think Delphi's going to have to adjust?
Well, again, it's a smaller map, like you just previously alluded to, it's a smaller map than the likes of, say, Daybreak and, you know, the big, like, Cloud Kingdom. The rush distances are a bit smaller. So going into that 3-base scenario, where you do see all that aggression, it's easy for Zergs to, for example, shut that down from a Terran because of the way in which they spread their overlords down the left and right-hand columns, where you can't necessarily get too much vision with ground units. And then spreading your units across the opening, as well as getting that all-important creep spread going, which is very easy to do on Ohana because it's all like one level in the mid. Then it's all very, very good.
Let's go ahead and introduce our players. Down in the bottom left from Germany and Team Alternate Attacks, it will be Delphi.
And spawning up to the top left-hand corner, we do have the red Terran, and his name is Startail Bomber.
Now, Bomber is constructing his depot right next to his main command center. Does save you about 15 extra minerals as opposed to constructing it out by your entrance natural ramp. However, Bomber does tend to be the player who likes to do these one barracks early expand. Do you think this is ever a risk against a player like Delphi?
I think the Delphi is, again, another Zerg that does like to play straight up. He can mix it up from time to time, but Delphi is more happy going into a macro situation. And again, especially on Ohana, I do like the way in which Zergs are able to transition into that macro game, because the ability to spread creep can be so strong. And, ooh, even checking for a little bit of a proxy there, potentially. As Delphi just going for that hatchery first, which is always very, very standard from here.
Yeah, I like that move to do that check on the proxy, because now it looks like Delphi is feeling comfortable building these 2 extra drones, which is something we see players not doing as often on Ohana. But I think that Delphi's going to be very pleased when he sees that Bomber hasn't walled in. This not only means that he's certainly early expanding, but also would indicate that Bomber's going to have to play a little bit more defensively. He can't hide anything from Delphi, and there, scooting around, he will get the count on the SCVs, see that it's a reasonable amount. He knows where everything is, and there's the 1 barracks early expand from Bama.
Ah, yes. And just to come back to what you said at the start of that, I really like, as you said, what Delphi did with the two extra drones. Normally what you would see from a Zerg is trying to go for a spawning pool almost straight after going for that hatchery, just to be able to keep themselves warded against some early aggression, but establishing that that threat wasn't there, and from there on going for it. Very, very nicely done.
Drone now pulling back. Quite an early gas geyser coming out of Bomber, but just an early single gas geyser. So this is generally an indication that he wants to be going for some sort of fast factory play. Could very well go for oh, looks our admin left the game. At first I thought that was Delphi that just got his overlord shot a couple times and was like, screw this, I'm out. But everything seems pretty well and good. But interestingly, Bomber's building a second barracks. Perhaps he has some sort of timing push planned, as a lot of players are steering more towards barracks play.
I think he probably will end up having the 3rd barracks on as well. There we go. To be able to, I mean, just going for this, able to kind of ward yourself a little bit, maybe with extra bunkers at the front, to be able to deal with any kind of potential roach pressure that would come along would be nice. But it seems to me like Bomber probably could have got quite easily away against Delphi with going up to that factory quickly for the Hellions if he wants to try and put some harassment on with that, or even some kind of containment ability from there on.
Yeah, I mean, I do like the Hellion opening in general, but I'm really intrigued to see what Bomber's bringing out. I mean, the first player I saw do this early barracks aggression was Ganji, and it worked absolutely stunningly. What will generally happen is 2 tech labs will go down simultaneously, followed by some Marauder combat shield aggression. But Delphi is just doing kind of a normal opening, just getting his double queen up, making sure that his creep spread gets started. We see that there are 4 queens out right now. 2 early extractors as well. Almost always players would delay those if they get 4 early queens and go for the fast 3rd base. But now Bomber looks like he's building Marines 4 at a time, getting himself a factory up. Haven't seen anything quite yet out of Bomber.
The interesting variation that I'm seeing from Bomber is the fact that normally when you see a Terran go 3 barracks right after command center, or two extra barracks after command center, they will normally go for a 2nd gas at the same time as the 1st gas. Now, he's only got 1 gas. Normally it's to get the 2 gases so that you have enough gas to then transition to siege tech and siege tanks. But for now, he's playing very, very gaslight in this earlier stage. And, I mean, where do you think he's going to go from here with that kind of play?
Well, I would have been ordinarily convinced that there was some sort of combat shield play coming up. There, finally, is the combat shield play coming up. And look at this. It looks like he's going for a large Marine force. He's going to even get some Hellions. And, oh, a nice bunker placement. It looks like Delphi doesn't see that bunker at all. And there, Delphi now swinging forward with a lot of his queens. Will not be able to get in position. And, oh, Bomber's going to be able to catch a queen off guard.
Oh, indeed, he may end up doing so. Nice little micro move there by Bomber to be able to keep one of the two of those Marines alive against the queens. Kills off the Zerglings. And this hatchery is very, very much under threat right now.
Yeah, this is a awful spot to be in. We see that Delphi is at 85% done with that hatchery, and now that that bunker is done, he's going to need a cancel. Loses one queen right off the bat, still having to deal with this push, and oh no, it looks like he's actually going to let it finish. I don't know if I like that, Kalaris.
Oh no, he could have quite easily cancelled that, and from there on, with the second bunker going down as well, this position is so well reinforced. Banelings are morphing in to try and bust this, but the hatchery is probably going to go down here unless he's able to pull out some kind of miracle attack with these Zerglings. Speed's going to be finishing up in just a little bit as well, but look at that positioning of the Marines next to the mineral lines there by Bomber.
And there's the push forward with the Baneling nest attempted, but pulled back at the last second. A transfuse trying to keep that alive a little bit longer. Banelings now darting forward, and it looks like they will do some good damage, but Bomber's going to pull out and immediately salvage. 3 more Banelings about to pop out as well.
Oh, perfect decision making there by Bomber, adding on that second bunker to be able to just bolster the position once again. But actually, with those last Baneling hits, he actually might be able to save this hatchery.
This
and
is a
he's going
nice
to.
save.
Wow. That I did not expect that. That was clutch. With that transfuse just alone, that was going to be so close if that transfuse hadn't gone down as well.
And if we come back to the unit station, we see that, amazingly, that Delphi is ahead in the drone count. He does have 4 hatcheries up right now. Bomber's doing pretty good defensively. He's getting up his engineering base. He has Marines with combat shield. He has small number of Hellions out right now, 6 out in the middle of the map. But oh, he gets 3 pinned. This is an unusual little set of flubs from Bomber.
Yeah, Delphi is playing this, well, I mean, he's capitalizing on his opponent's mistakes in that position there. But not only that, when it came to that bunker pressure, he really dealt with that very, very nicely. So extremely impressive by Delphi right now. But as you said, off the back of this, Bomber is by no means down and out at all. He is getting his 3rd command center up. He's getting those upgrades now. He's getting Stim on the way. There is a Roach Warren going down for Delphi to try and deal with this, and centrifugal hooks to deal with the very, very light-based army that we're seeing from Bomber here. But this is a very, very scary push in itself.
Bomber continuing this theme that Terrans are doing all nowadays, just a mass aggression. There's the Baneling spreading in, but look at the splitting by Bomber. An incredible job keeping all those Marines nicely spread apart. And there we see the Hellion Marine Force with combat shield now stepping into action. 9 Roaches in production, and Delphi is again looking really, really, really close to holding.
Yeah, it's always down to the wire with Delphi right now. It's so tension-filled as Delphi is going to be able to push this back, but just barely with the help of those queens, and with the Roaches reinforcing now, he is going to be fine and dandy. So Bomber, with all this aggression, but not having it able to pay off for him.
Oh, but it does look like we see some Hellions darting up into the main base. 1 falls, but 3 manage to get up. That's enough to be able to one-shot those drones.
It is indeed, as some drones come off the line to try and pincer them in there against those Zerglings. Not going to be able to catch them, though, but the Zerglings with that speed finally chase them down. And actually, he's only lost around 9 workers in total, as there are more Hellions in the 3rd base here, roasting those drones. Really nice double-pronged aggression there by Bomber.
Looks like 13 workers total have been killed off, but I mean, Kalaris, I'm not exactly convinced that Bomber's done the damage that he needs to. If you look at the units lost tab, it's quite high for Delphi, but look at the overall supply counts. It's 80 to 135. 23 Roaches out on the field, only 11 Marines, and I mean, if Delphi just gathers together a bunch of Banelings and goes for the bust, I honestly think that it's going to work.
No, you're right. I mean, considering the units lost tab and now seeing that Delphi, yes, has lost a little more than Bomber, you've got to always factor in the fact that Delphi at this point in the game has mined a little bit more than Bomber as well. Yeah. So he is now pushing up to that 140, 150 supply.
Oh my God.
And look at this push. This is crazy.
Oh no, and Bomber is going to get caught at the worst possible angle. He's moving up. Oh, looks like 1 Marine does spot this huge force rolling in.
God.
He has the speed, and he was shooting at the destructible rocks. Now all the Banelings are rolling in, immediately annihilating these front line of bunkers, and oh my God, I think Bomber is in a ton of trouble, Kalaris.
Oh, indeed. Delphi now capitalizing on the position that Bomber finds himself in. At the start of this push, he only had 17 Marines and 1 Marauder, and this many.
And there's good game. An
Delphi.
incredibly unexpected result as Delphi takes down Bomber with ease.
Oh my, Bomber's aggression just did not help him out there from the very get-go, and Delphi was able to shut it down. Admittedly, saving that hatchery was very fine indeed, and if that hadn't gone down, there would have been less lava for him to go into that mid-game, which might have hindered him a little bit going into that particular push itself. But Delphi capitalized on his opponent's mistakes, and from there on was able to do what he saw.
Yeah, you know, I almost feel like I was somewhat biased going into the game at the very start because, I mean, honestly, Bomber is on one of the highest levels of play that you can possibly be on. And Delphi, honestly, has had some success in Germany, but is just not a GSL champion caliber material. So in the start of that game, when I saw that bunker go down at the third, I kind of had that, oh, it's going to be just, it's going to win with a bunker, and it's going to be a terrible game number one. But then Delphi held that off beautifully, as you said, held the follow-up attack off beautifully. But the thing that always impresses me most is when a player doesn't just build to defend, but he builds those defensive units to mount a counterattack. And that is what allowed him to crush Bomber before Bomber got all that upgrade 2-2 stuff up. Yeah,
no, that's entirely correct. And, I mean, just coming back to what you said before, I, too, had a similar bias feeling. Obviously not in a casting sense, but in terms of how we thought the results were going to go. Because I don't think many people could dispute that. Bomber is a class in itself in terms of play here, but Delphi bringing the absolute thunder to game number one. And
crazy.
That was superb play by Delphi there. Superb.
Yeah, I mean, that now means that the series is up 1-0 for Delphi, going on to the next map, Daybreak, which is honestly a very comfortable map for a Zerg player to be on against a Terran. I mean, how do you think Bomber will just have to adjust to the way that Elfi's opened up?
I think, technically, I feel that he could quite easily go for the same kind of thing, going for the aggression early on, but after having Delphi being able to shut it down without the initial vision of the bunker going up, we may see Delphi take the precautions necessary to be able to shut that down. So it might be the case of Bomber can't actually stick with that potential early aggression, and from there on needs to go for something a little different, maybe Banshees, or I'm spitballing here.
I mean, the truth is that Terran players have all been ramping up the aggression as of late. I mean, especially Teja, who has an 80% win rate since the start of the year. That really goes to show that he kind of gets the matchup. I mean, Bomber did yet another kind of standard, or a little less than standard, early aggression with this Marine going into the Hellion play. And it just got swatted aside so easily. I mean, in terms of motions, everything looked correct for the Terran player, but for some reason, just wasn't quite able to knock down the front door, and Delphi just moved forward magnificently.
Yeah, indeed. So, going on to game number 2 here with Delphi 1-0 up. If you're just tuning in, guys, Delphi taking a very, very nice game off Bomber there in game number 1. And make sure to check out ESL.tv/IEM for pretty much all the information that you actually need here. That landing page for the Intel Extreme Masters, it provides you with the groups and all the brackets that we're going into throughout these 5 days, as well as some other information such as the tweet feed, and also make sure to hashtag IEM and tweet us at Day9TV and at Kyalaris, and tell us how you think the groups are going to go.
Yeah, so, I mean, right now, again, for any of you who are a little confused about the structure, the open bracket is what's going to be going on all day today. These players are trying to battle into the groups of 6, whereby the top 3 in those groups of 6 advance to the playoff single elimination that will be happening on Saturday, Sunday of this week, as Thursday and Friday are the group stage games. And, again, very surprising result that we're seeing right off the bat with Delphi getting the 1-0 lead against Bomber.
Yeah, very, very true. And I must say, as a personal note, I'm so excited to be back here at the Intel Extreme Masters. This is where everything kicked off for me. Starting off at the Intel Extreme Masters World Championship, it's a bit of a deep pool to be thrown into to begin with, but it was an absolute treat. So to be able to get this Intel Extreme Masters season kicked off once again, and to be able to follow it through its entirety, hopefully, unless I get fired, is great. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, and I mean, this is actually one of the first events that Starcraft 2 had at all. I mean, the Intel Extreme Masters Gamescom in 2010 was actually, I believe, how soon after the release of Starcraft 2? It may have even it wasn't
months
quite
or so?
a beta. I mean, it was right after the release of StarCraft 2 in August. Oh, that's right, July 27th, the release of StarCraft 2. In August, I think 16th was when the first tournament came right out the gate, and it was that invite structure.
Yeah.
And it's just built and built in size until now it can be a fully open bracket qualification.
Was that the tournament that you famously fell off the chair?
That was at CeBIT in Hanover in 2011, where I was coming back from the restroom in a break, and they started about 5 seconds before I got there, and I leapt over the stage and sat on absolutely nothing and fell to my
Sorry to bring back
knees.
bad memories. I do apologize for that, but...
No, it was a good memory. It's one of my favorites, man. You should check it out, Day 9 Chair on YouTube. Not nearly as scary as the chair from Amnesia.
No, indeed. I watched a little bit of you playing that, and I actually played it myself. And
it's actually the scariest thing that's ever happened to me in my life. It's terrifying. It's even scarier than when I went into a class one day and found out that I just hadn't taken the midterm because they just started passing back graded midterms. Really? And there I was, and I was like, when did this happen?
That's pretty bad, man.
Not nearly as scary as Amnesia.
Okay, so let's jump into game number 2 here on Daybreak, as we do have, spawning up to the top right-hand corner here, the winner of our previous game, slightly unexpectedly. He goes by the name of ATN Delphi, going to be spawning as our blue Zerg. And spawning down to the bottom left-hand corner, we do have Mr. Startails Bomber spawning here as our red Terran.
Yeah, and on this map, I do think that one of the most standard openings that I think Bomber should rely on if he wants to return back to those standard routes would be the Hellion Banshee opening.
Yeah.
That's kind of the bread and butter of Terran players nowadays. It allows them to have the fast mobile units up early to deny creep spread, to do harassment at the start. It also allows you to get 3 command centers up quite quickly to do the macro mode. It's a little difficult to get your Marine upgrades up that quickly, but players are less and less favoring fast Marine upgrades and more just favoring having a lot of stuff in this matchup.
Yeah, no, you're entirely right. And interestingly enough, once again, Delphi going to be sending out that drone scout to be able to spot any kind of proxy potential. Again, people like Bomber and Korean Terrans in general like to mix it up a little bit, like to bring that aggression in a best of 3, which means it can throw a lot of Zergs off, and it can be difficult to deal with if you haven't initially spotted it.
And there's the barracks now, up at the left side. It's this sort of unorthodoxy that the Koreans do that I like a lot. Just interesting building placements, even when they are doing something quite standard, just due to the fact that often Delphi will scout into the main base, see nothing, freak out, build too many Zerglings, and then Bomber gets away with a very clean early expand.
You're entirely right there, as he comes into the base for now and has a little bit of a look around. Not seeing any barracks just yet, so he's either going to assume from here that it's, some kind of proxy barracks, or it's some kind of command center first build. Either that or the barracks is just randomly hidden somewhere anyway. So Delphi is doing a good job actually here of scouting around other locations, but unfortunately he hasn't scouted the one location that it is in.
Yeah, that is always a really tough spot to be in as a Zerg when you just have absolutely no idea what's going on. Let's see how Delphi does respond. Perhaps he would be delaying a geyser. Perhaps he's just going to leave this drone. Yeah, I like this play quite a bit, just leaving the drone by the Xel'Naga watchtower. It looks like, ooh, this is going to continue the ruse. I mean, if I'm in Delphi's shoes, I'm going to be thinking, oh my gosh, he's going to be building 8 Zerglings right off the bat, might even delay those queens, but they're the one SCV pulls off. And there's no backup SCV, and that should be Delphi's signal to not make too many lings.
Yeah, no, you're entirely right there, as he has been able to fend that off nicely. He does lose a little bit of fighting time, admittedly, but the spine crawler is on the way, and as you kind of just kind of peeked at there, maybe a little bit of an overextension.
Yeah, finally now pulling back and building the queens, doing the more standard play, getting his macro started. But there's Bomber. Oh, yes, getting the double gas geyser. Does look like we're probably going to see some sort of Hellion-based play.
Yep, that's always one of the very, very common builds to see here. Even throwing the bunker down there just to be able to... It's interesting, these bunker placements that you see from Terrans nowadays, just a little bit further back near the ramp. To be able to kind of try and deal with something if the push is going to be coming up the ramp as well, so you can actually shoot at the units whilst they're at the top of the ramp.
Yeah, this is, I think, one of the most brilliant things that Terran players have done nowadays. It's allowing them to get away with everything, and it looks like, oh no, again, Delphi gets a really lucky break. He's just darting right in. The 8 Zerglings he built at the start are going to get maximum use as they're going to head in, pick off themselves a lot of SCVs at the start of the game. I mean, even picking off 1 or 2 would have been just a pretty comfortable exchange, and he manages to get 3 right off the bat. Bomber now at 19 SCVs versus the 25 of Delphi.
And very much so. It seems like that initial economic supply depot hurt him a little bit there. You know, having that in your wall would have shut that down straight away.
Yeah.
But because he did not have that there, Delphi just able to seize the opportunity once again. And in a similar vein to game number 1, he's just exploiting the slight little errors that we're seeing from Bomber's play here.
Yeah, we haven't really seen any sort of anything really too mind-blowing from Delphi in terms of originality.
No.
He's just doing ultra-stable plays.
Yeah.
He saw the bunker rush, overbuilt Zerglings, and said, well, I overbuilt Zerglings. I may as well try to do damage with them. Completely standard play, and yet Bomber seemingly getting caught off guard. Bomber, again, going for the Hellion Banshee play. Absolutely love that on this map. Third hatchery popping down for Delphi right now. Also like this quite a bit, as it's so easy to defend. He may very well go up to 6 queens.
Yeah, and especially after the little bit of poking damage he was able to do there in game number 1, he was able to, in that initial poke, then he was able to, you know, do quite a bit of damage. And from there, it makes it a little bit easier to secure this third. Now, the Hellions are on the way, but these queens are already moving out to a little bit of an interesting position, actually.
Yeah, these queens are getting very far out. They might be going to try to get the watchtower themselves, I suppose. It gets extremely, extremely dangerous to get your queens that far out onto the map. And there we see Bomber is aware of the third base. Delphi now scouting in at just the perfect time. Look at this. In the production tab, we see that the first Banshee is about to pop out. Cloaking has just started. And this is going to be a pretty nice situation for Delphi to be in.
Yeah, and this is something that we kind of tried to potentially anticipate. Oh, and he's faking the cloak. He's going for Caduceus Reactor.
Oh, and he's heading up into the main base. It looks like he's going to try to do maximum damage to the back worker line, but Delphi has somewhat of a block. No, he's unable to block off these Hellions, and those are so lined up. Kalaris,
he takes a lot of damage there with one volley. 4 drones ending up dying. He's going to get a few more as well as these Hellions try to push forward, trying to do a little bit more damage. 2 more workers, and 4 more workers. And up to 10 there, killed off. Really, really nice little aggression there by Bomber.
Yeah, Bomber, interestingly, is not following this up with a third command center, as is the standard in this... there's the third command center, as is totally standard with this play. He's going to be able to get his double upgrades up. He's going into the long-term late game. Still a drone lead on the plate for Delphi.
Yep. Now, it's interesting that Bomber is advocating a little bit of a style here, which isn't necessarily as greedy as some Terrans do want to play. A little bit of Banshee Harass actually going off on here as well, though, as the Spore Crawler and Queen trying to position themselves here. And again, because he fakes that Caduceus Reactor, he really did force these Spore Crawlers.
Yeah, I mean, this is an excellent play by Bomber. I like that force quite a bit. 1-1 actually getting a little bit flubbed there by Delphi. Bomber leaving the Banshee in the most annoying defensive position possible. This way, Delphi is almost always going to be on the lookout, not wanting to move out, not wanting to risk getting out of position. These Spore Crawlers, did he actually manner himself with a Spore Crawler? No, it looks like he still can mine there. Baneling Nest now incoming. We don't actually see the macro hatch that we saw from Delphi in the original game, so
yeah.
He is going super defensive. There's another defensive structure at the third base.
No, that's very right. And from there, again, as you rightly pointed out, maybe not getting too aggressive. He is getting the Baneling Nest, but that's just going to ward him against any kind of, those Marine and Hellion pokes that did come along in game number 1. So he's getting 1-1 on the way, and I love going for the melee upgrades as opposed to, say, like committing to roaches in the mid-game against Terran, which is something that some Zergs do, because the melee upgrades just help you so much more in the late game, whereas the ranged weapons become very, very redundant.
Yeah, that's a great point, especially the integration with Broodlords and Ultralisks. The melee upgrades are just fantastic, and interestingly, we're seeing a straight transition to that infestation pit. Where is that macro hatch being constructed? He's getting up. Oh, there it is, in the main base. He might even be able to get away building another one. At this point in time, it looks like Bomber is taking up his third as well, so it's defensive mode.
Indeed he do, as he does have those gases on the way as well, so he's going to be going straight up to the 6 gas geysers to be able to pump out a lot of tanks if he so desires. Does he have siege tech? Yes, he does. So with centrifugal hooks on the way, there's always the potential that Baneling and fungal connections can be very, very brutal against a Terran, and that's something that Bomber will have to ward himself against. But in game 1, he was able to split very nicely against the Baneling, so if he's able to take that defensive stance early on, then that can really, really help him against Delphi's style here.
Yeah, I do think that this is a much nicer way that Bomber's playing it out. Much more his standard. Anytime he's in trouble, he just goes for 3 base. Huge macro. Is just now finished 1-1. We'll be certainly doing some sort of push around 2-2. Might even do one slightly earlier. But we have seen Bomber do interesting things like take this center expansion a little bit earlier. But not going to go for that this game. Delphi, on the other hand, is doing a magnificent job spreading creep. Holy crap, Kalaris. Yeah. Look at that.
And not only is that creep great for defense, but also the spine crawler positioning that we're seeing from Delphi is great for defense. He's building spine crawlers in the back to be able to deal with any kind of drop play that would come along, as well as the extremities of his 3rd base. And no doubt we'll see some go down at the 4th base, which Delphi is going to be taking as well, because you don't necessarily need them in the middle when your army is positioned through that vicinity. So he's creating a really nice defensive barrier here.
Uh-oh, looks like Bomber's doing a drop at the bottom right. Wow, we're seeing another attack happen at the 3rd base, and Bomber is again surprisingly underprepared for this. It looks like the first 2 tanks fall down, but there's the tank shot that Bomber needed. Is just obliterating those banelings, and a hugely bad attack for Delphi, and it looks like he will also lose his bottom right base.
Yeah, those Marines going to be able to do quite a bit of damage, and they do force the cancellation on that 4th, but the Sense Tower on the way now for Bomber as well. And the siege tanks that we had from Bomber in the 3rd location weren't really backed up by the Marines initially, so he did get some relatively free siege tank kills there, but once the Marines came in, it was okay.
So it looks like Bomber now in that bottom right corner with the medevac. Delphi now moving to try to meet it with his Infestor pack. We see drones being transferred to an expansion that isn't there. And, I mean, Delphi's not in a terrible position, but he's certainly not in a great one.
No, not at all. As for now, Delphi will be able to send back all his... Where is he actually going? He's going over to a different location. As for now, he will be able to just throw down that 4th. Once again, 5th going up as well, so I really like this from Delphi, as well as getting up that hive. And from now on, though, Bomber is looking to go for the aggression. Oh, wow, look at the macro here from Bomber. He's got 15 Marines on the way at any given time. 2-2 going to be finishing up in just a little bit, and that is going to be way before the upgrades here of Delphi. And with the extra siege tanks in production as well, Bomber going up to a 4th command center here. He is flying in terms of macro.
Looks like Bomber now trying to get into a good position at the south side. Has cleaned up enough of the creep to be in a good spot. He's distracted Delphi just long enough, and this is the Bomber that we know so well. He's moving down to this bottom right half, and there it looks like, oh, the siege tank sieging up. Delphi doesn't retreat. He doesn't manage to hit a fungal either. The tanks rip apart that front line of Banelings. A couple Infestors get taken out as well, and Bomber is looking to be in an amazing position in this game.
Yeah, too true. He was able to retain so many of those Marines thanks to the fact that he wasn't able to land those fungal growths, and now he's going to continue the aggression. He's separating a lot of his Marines, really nicely done here. He does get a good surround on some of these Marines with the Zerglings, and a nice fungal growth to finish that off, but it just isn't enough right now. Bomber doesn't have that many medevacs out here to be able to heal up the majority of these units, but he's still going to be able to get this base kill.
And now is also trying to do a nice push up to the 3rd base. Bomber does take out the queen, takes out 2 queens, and completely avoids losing that to that spore crawler as well. And Delphi's looking just behind in general. I mean, his Ultralisk Cavern is a little slow. He's trying to get up his Baneling Zergling army in the middle. His Infestor count is down to 0. He has 100 drones on the map.
Yeah, and this is I mean, in comparison to Game 1, this is really showing where Bomber shines. Going into this big macro game and being able to poke here, there, and everywhere, he's got, again, he's going to be pushing into the middle of the map, dropping the scan here to be able to kill off those creep tumors, make that recede just a little bit, and from there on, he's going to try and pressure this 5th, in inverted commas, to be able to take it out once again.
And it looks like Delphi is going to try to set himself up for a multi-pronged attack, but Bomber is already in good position. He's shutting down all those Zergling Baneling attempts. Bomber's standard play is just completely overpowering Delphi in this position. And there he is moving up from the front, picking off some of these Zerglings. He desperately wants to keep that one hatchery alive, but no, it's not going to cut it. Bomber takes it down.
Ouch. And just a quick question, Day 9. Oh, actually, with the Zerglings coming in, hold that thought, as he's going to be able to try and defend once again. But Delphi just does not have enough here to be able to break Bomber. And with the economy that Delphi finds himself in now, I mean, with Adrenal Glands and a few Ultras on the way, do you think he has enough economy to be able to really fund this war effort?
It's so hard to go for a Ling Infestor Ultra army when you have just 6 gas geysers. Getting 7 and 8 are the most important aspects to that. Delphi now will have to try to recoup himself, but I mean, Bomber's in great position, taking himself at 4th base. Already has it completely muled up, already has the planetary fortress there, is reinforcing so quickly. I mean, this is Bomber's game.
Yeah, he is looking phenomenal here. Delphi, admittedly, does rise a little bit in his supply count, currently 185 to the 189 of Bomber, but again, he needs to somehow find that miracle move to still re-establish himself some economy whilst being able to actually shut down all this drop aggression and then mount some kind of counter-offensive to be able to shut down the infrastructure and economy of Bomber. It's going to be very, very difficult here for Delphi, despite having Kaiser's placing on the way and more Ultralisks on the way.
So it looks like Delphi is now moving up to the top side. He is trying to get into a good position to defend against this, but he is going to be trying to deal with this upcoming push that's heading through mid-map. Down in the bottom right, Hatchery is trying to go up. There's a single fungal, but gosh, Delphi just cannot find out a good angle.
Not at all, and with that only one infestor there, he didn't have many fungals at all. He has one more extra infestor waddling along here to try and put on this aggression. He's going to try and bust Bomber here, as Bomber did provide himself with a fantastic position. Bomber piling in from the back.
Some excellent swipes there on the Ultralisk, managed to take down most of the tanks, but still, Bomber keeps most of his army alive. And there's the good game, well played. Tying the series up 1-1. So that does mean that Bomber, again, looking to be in good form. Just need apparently a warm-up game to get into the groove of things.
Yeah. I mean, that game two was just, aside from the little slip in the early game where the Zerglings got in, that was a different Bomber from game number one. He's just getting into his rhythm, and then once he goes into those big macro plays, he's able to really kind of push out, that multi-pronged aggression that Delphi wasn't necessarily able to deal with, despite going for some aggression of his own. So the multitasking stretched a little bit there for Delphi, but he's still in this, and from here on, there's still a lot to play for.
Yeah, and I mean, the last map is going to be Cloud Kingdom, which I think is another excellent map for Bomber to try to pull off a clean win. But you think back on how Delphi ended up winning game one. He won it with a big early layer tech push. Speed Banelings, Speed Roaches, and Zerglings. No mutas, no infestors, none of that higher tech stuff, and just won the game very straightforwardly. Cloud Kingdom, another map where that's quite possible.
Yep.
We have seen that there are a lot of fast tank plays that Bomber does that help deal with those types of aggressions.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, in game number one, that's something he was skipping for a long time. We pointed out initially that his second gas was a little bit later than you would normally see after the 3 barracks being placed down. Obviously, wouldn't have straight access to that tech very, very quickly. Yeah. And from there, he did get shut down. But bringing it back in game number 2, and it's going to be interesting to see game number 3 as we are going on to Cloud Kingdom. Yeah. Awesome.
You know, again, it's another nice map to do that sort of Hellion Banshee play. It's always a stable position to be in. Most significantly, though, I do think the early tank plays, taking the early thirds, can be quite helpful, just in terms of the defensive position.
Yeah.
But most of all, I want to see a tankless play. I want to see him just go huge Marine medevac and just blast down at so many different angles. I mean, this is one of the most droppable, multi-prong attackable maps in the entire pool.
Yeah, it really is. Now, the interesting thing about that is that Delphi sometimes leaves his Baneling Nest to a little bit of a later moment in the game that you would normally see from ZVT. And that, again, if he does go for some, just mass Marine, push down the front, being able to crush from there, if you don't have those Banelings in play, as well as the good creep spread, which admittedly we've been seeing from Delphi here, then he could be in a little bit of trouble.
Now it looks like game number 3, the final game of the series, is now underway. And down in the bottom left corner of Cloud Kingdom, spawning as the blue Zerg, it's going to be alternate attacks Delphi. And up in the top right, from Team Startail, is going to be Bomber.
It's indeed, as Cloud Kingdom, our final map for this best of 3. So we are in and good to go here as Bomber. He showed in game number 2 that Delphi ain't no boss to him. He is going to be bringing out exactly what he wants to do. And he could mix it up once again, but the Banshee play was relatively successful. It was able to get a few kills from it. Now, I think more than anything, he tied up the economical position with his harassment more than anything. Maybe put himself in a little bit of a lead thanks to the Hellion harassment as well, killing off those 10 initial drones. And once he had that third command center up, he was flying from there.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to mess up when you've gotten such an economic lead. You can make 1 million SCVs, you've killed 1 million drones, and you have those mules, and doesn't everyone love complaining about mules? Oh, they give so much stuff.
They are very,
to that
very
economy.
Strong. So for now, he is just opening up with that one barracks to begin with. No inklings of any kind of shenaniganry going down here from Bomber. No proxy barracks on the way. Meanwhile, we see Delphi actually going for that drone scout once again. He is not leaving anything to chance here, going up against Bomber. And from there on, he will be able to just head on into the Terran's base here and able to scout him out. And we already have the hatchery on the way for Delphi as well.
Yeah, I like that Delphi's not messing around at any point. It's easy to get a little over-eager and try to do some sort of cheese, sticking to his standard stable play. And again, getting this early scout so he can sneak out 2 early drones.
Yep, so for now, and you know, again, from game 1, putting himself in that economical position, just every extra little drone this early on is extremely, extremely important. So Delphi providing himself with that nice little cushion there, and meanwhile he will spot that command center going down, so he knows exactly what Startail Bomber is going to be doing from the very get-go.
No gas yet from Delphi. Looks like he does favor those sort of early queen plays. Still not really any sort of information coming out of Bomber as to what his long-term plan is going to be, but it will be coming up in no time as he's just about to get that extra depot finished. So he'll either be adding on barracks, getting a single gas or double gas. It'll help give us a better idea.
Yep. Now, there are plenty of options, as you rightly point out. It's you know, the double barracks play or the double gas play first, able to really kind of ramp up that tech if he so desires. Again, I would love to see the double gas play to be able to just go for those Hellions once again. It worked for him in game number 2. Why fix what's not broken? And Cloud Kingdom is another map that allows you to be able to go for that kind of thing.
So it does look like Delphi is getting his early double queens up. Looking so good. Will he end up getting the 4 queen play up? And oh, look at this Bomber. This is the Bomber we know and love, going for the mega fast command center third. Not going to be doing any sort of messing around at all. He is just going straight for that. And will he go for the barracks follow-up? That would most generally be what we'd see out of him. Still no read on what he wants to be doing yet.
And he is keeping in 1 SCV down to the bottom right-hand corner to be able to scout out maybe the potential timing of a third, or even the potential like drone saturation at the natural to see whether or not his opponent's going to end up doing some aggression later on. There's tons of things and tons of timings he can use that SCV for. And meanwhile, Bomber making his decisions.
Yeah, I do like this triple barracks play out of Bomber. I mean, so often it's easy to get distracted by all the fun craziness that you can do with your tanks, Banshees, Hellions, this sort of thing. But at the end of the day, you want to be going for Marine Marauder as your core mix. You don't want to be doing anything too crazy that deviates too far away from it, or else you'll just end up screwing yourself over.
I mean, you're right. I mean,
your opponent comes in. I mean, that's honestly how he ended up losing in the last game. He just got too many things that weren't basic Marine Marauder, and then the Roach Baneling attack just won right off the bat.
Yeah, did indeed. And as we were alluding to earlier, Startail Bomber using that SCV to be able to spot that third, and even throwing down the bunker once again. And there's not going to be too much to notice this. Delphi is sending some queens straight over there, though, despite not seeing this bunker just yet. Oh no, he has seen it with just the tip of the Overlord. Fantastic.
Oh, that's going to be really nice for Delphi. A nice little win. He's now floating in here. And if you're Delphi and you pop in here and you don't see the third command center, you're going to get real suspicious real fast. You're especially going to be thinking that there is a big attack about to happen right off the bat. And there it looks like we see a bunch of Marines that are going to get completely shut down. This is going to turn out very nicely for Delphi in terms of his third base, but not so nicely in terms of the amount of larvae he spent on those on these little Zerglings. no matter what. You never really want to be overlinging in this position in a game.
Oh, you're entirely right. But look what we have in the production tab right now. Delphi throwing down that Baneling Nest as well as getting a flurry of Zerglings out extra here. So he might get very, very aggressive off this situation that he finds himself in. And as such, Bomber is throwing down an extra bunker. I don't think he's scouted out the Baneling Nest or anything just yet. But from here, I mean, Delphi still has options. He could still transfer into a macro game after trying putting on some aggression.
You know, I'm kind of torn on this move by Bomber. I mean, he's going for the 3 barracks. That's great. Wants to maybe get a little bit aggressive. Wants to do a little bit of attacking, but now he's backing up and he's getting these double engineering bays. I mean, I almost feel like if you're getting stim this early, you want to be following it up with a faster factory. I mean, what do you think?
I think it can lend itself very nicely to that kind of play. Right now, he still doesn't know what is going on, so if he was able to get tanks out a little bit quicker, then it would have been fantastic against this aggression that we're seeing from Delphi right now. But he still has no clue. He's had no map presence for the entire 2 minutes. Oh,
Delphi is going to be walking right into a trap. Oh, no, he has to kill off so many depots, and now we see all the SCVs able to walk into position unless these are some huge detonations. It is going to be lights out for Delphi's attack. There he manages to bust down a single bunker. Bunker number 2 falls, but it looks like more than enough defense ended up staying alive for the Terran.
Yeah, that's very true. A nice little play there by Bomber, preparing himself, sensing that something was up without having too much intel on it. But for now, with those Banelings once again morphing in, he still needs to keep bolstering this defense because the second wave could potentially come along and do some damage.
You have 14, 15 Banelings coming out right now for Delphi. It looks like Bomber instantly repairs that. Siege mode is a few seconds from being done, and it looks like it will not be quite done in time. And here it comes, perhaps a supply block for Bomber, as we see Boom manages to knock down the front, and the tank gets a big hit on that back line, but both the bunkers fall, and once again we see Bomber in a little bit of a tight spot, but no, too many Marines out for Bomber, and shuts down the attack.
Yeah, very, very true. His macro holding up there to be able to keep that going. He did lose 16 workers during the entirety of this, so he is right now down to 38 against the 45, but Terran is probably feeling quite comfortable in that situation. Delphi hasn't been droning up too aggressively, but now is going to start kicking it into hyperdrive with 13 drones in production.
He's going to have to go crazy with the drone production. I mean, he has not had any sort of drone infrastructure for ages. He's been pretty much just trying to do an attack, maybe trying to do a defense. There's not really a clear through line, not really a clear plan for Delphi at this point. Now he's finally getting into that more Stefano-esque Zergling infester play. In the meantime, if you're Bomber, you're happy. All that attack really did was delay the status of the game. Nothing really changed too much for either player, except now Bomber got his upgrades done.
Do you think that if Delphi had fully committed, and not just gone kind of middle of the road with that aggression, then he would have been able to potentially break Bomber? Or do you think that the defensive structure was too much?
I mean, the defensive structure was just, honestly, I think perfect. But, I mean, if you're going to do that attack, you got to make sure that you do a huge attack. You can't just, I'm going to dabble in little things. You don't want to be a jack of all trades in Starcraft 2. You want to be really good at one thing in each game generally, and that is what will get you in good places. Bomber right now focusing in all late game. And this is an unusual timing attack window that he's managed to seize because his opponent's in a weak spot.
Yeah, he is. He's been droning this entire time. Admittedly, he does have a few Zerglings in production now after seeing this initial push out, but he could be a little bit late here.
He doesn't see the push.
Oh.
I don't think he sees it at all. This is the first sighting that he has had of it. He has only 5 Banelings, and there the tanks are sieging up. This could be nice for Delphi. Will help him buy just a little bit more time, but Delphi's going to have to go into real hero defense mode.
Yes, indeed, as those Marines push forward, killing off a Queen, which is nice, limiting that lava, but it's not going to matter if the hatchery ends up falling anyway here. Some Zerglings swinging into the back to try and get a little bit of a double-pronged attack here.
And it's an only Zergling defense by Delphi. He manages to sweep in, pick off a lot of the Marines at the front, but no Banelings manage to connect with really anything, and there he kills off 1 tank, not 2. 1 still is alive. In the meantime, Bomber's now taking himself a 3rd base. And look at this play. I love this, Kalaris. He's just pulling back. This is still a beautiful response there by Bomber. He knows that he couldn't possibly win with that attack, but he did plenty of damage.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be full direct damage. Yes, he killed the Queen and he killed a lot of Zerglings, but importantly, he wasted so much lava of his opponents.
Yeah.
Committing to those Zerglings that he may not have wanted to commit to at that point in time.
The tank gets out with 4 hit points. Delphi was trying to target fire it with his last tapering bit of reinforcements, but didn't manage to connect. And Delphi, I think, also doing an interesting response in his own right, saying, you know what? I think I'm behind in almost every regard. but my opponent ain't going to be attacking me anytime soon. So I'm going to double expand. I'm going to hive immediately. I'm going to completely skip out on infestors. I think that's a brilliant play by Delphi, but tragically he sees the third up.
Yeah, and it's interesting that we're seeing the hive at this time by Delphi. A lot of Zergs nowadays are adopting a style of very, very quick hives, even 11-minute hives from time to time from people like Vortex and Sortov sometimes. So Delphi just sticking with a little bit of a later hive, but considering how the game flow's gone, it's not necessarily too early, late anyway.
Yeah, he desperately needs to just start pumping these full of gas mining drones. We are seeing the huge swell in drone count from Delphi, but this is a really, really awkward timing. Excuse me, and also a very risky timing coming out for Delphi, but I think you actually have to take risks if you're in this position. Bomber doing kind of a weird move, moving out with 2 medevacs at once, while not really having enough Marines to mount a ground offensive. He's literally hoping to do straight damage with these attacks.
And will these Banelings be able to spot the medevac now? They do, but does Delphi see that on his minimap is the question. Meanwhile, the drop down to the bottom right-hand corner hasn't been spotted as of yet. There was one Ling burrowed at the 4th location for a base here for Bomber, but it hasn't actually spotted that. Now the creep spots it, and I don't know how much this is going to do at this point.
Oh, it looks like Bomber does manage to spot the expansion on the left. Moving out with a push in the middle, but there's some burrowed Banelings that can be planted at the right side, but Delphi needs to hurry up. No, he misses his opportunity. The drop is planting down at the left position.
Oh, this is going to stretch Delphi very, very thinly here by the looks of things. The drop in the main, now also going down. He's going to try and target down the spawning pool, going for big damage whilst Adrenal Glance is researching. Zergling's on the way to try and defend this as best they can do, but with those Banelings more rolling in, he's going to have to pick that up very, very quickly.
And that's a very nice little land there for Delphi. He's going to buy himself a good chunk of time now. Bomber sweeping around to the 3rd base. Will be able to also get a pick off at the 4th base, but that drop that was at the left expansion has moved to the natural, and Delphi is just being pulled every which way.
Oh, he really is. Look at this position he's established down to the south with these siege tanks. How are you going to break that at this point when you're being dropped on so many fronts? Bomber is really, really ramping it up here in terms of stretching Delphi so much, and I don't know how Delphi is going to be able to deal with this.
Bomber creating problems both for Delphi and the Observer, trying to keep track of literally all the action that's going on in this game. There's medevacs just floating every which way on this map. And again, Bomber doing these great retreats. I love this so much. He does huge damage and pulls back to make for sure his reinforcements can join together.
Yeah, in total thus far, he has killed 18 workers. Delphi still is at 84, but with the 3rd base, 4th base even still being shut down over and over and over, and the 4th and 5th being killed off completely, how is he able to really get his economy in a position where he can continue to deal with the aggression of Bomber?
2 Marines making a pretty reasonable stand against a single Ultralisk at the left expansion.
Pretty impressive, pretty impressive.
And again, Bomber has managed to find himself a nearly perfectly defensible position on the right. But this is a good opportunity for Delphi. Delphi now starting to realize, well, wait, if your whole army is nestled away in an unattackable location, then your expansions are totally vulnerable as well. This is a very tank-heavy army in the top left, but still a very breakable position. Bomber's forces are completely split, Killaris.
They really are, and he could, yeah, as you said, he could take advantage of that.
Burrowed Banelings do a nice hit at the left.
Oh.
And there's the siege up, the late siege up. Oh my god, is Bomber really going to lose all of these tanks?
They end up doing so. These Zerglings on Ultralisk is able to do quite a bit of damage here, but they end up suddenly instantaneously dying. He was focusing those down quite nicely with the Zerglings focusing down.
No, Delphi just lost all those infestors for virtually nothing. Bomber will not end up losing these tanks, it appears. And down in the bottom left, Bomber has denied those expansions yet again. The straightforward, stable play of Bomber is just giving a world of trouble to Delphi.
Really is this drop here. Does Delphi have enough to deal with it? He has 5 Ultralisks out on the map, but they're in the middle of the map right now trying to deal with the siege tanks at that location. And with the Ultralisks waddling in here to try and deal with that, as well as the Zerglings cleaning up the tanks on the low ground, there's still, regardless of this push, another push on the way to the 5th base of Delphi.
Oh gosh, Bomber is playing magnificently in this late game. The pool has been killed off in the main base, no Ling reinforcements. Delphi trying to catch up. After a flubbed game number 1, Bomber is just bringing standard play to a whole new level, hitting every location possible at once, even having a tank sieged up in the main with 19 kills under its belt. The Hive now getting ready to fall down. Looking at the minimap, Delphi is spread out everywhere and yet has hardly any units. 55 drones, and there's a good game well played.
Wow. That was a heck of a series to kick things off here. That Bomber in that third game looked remarkable. That aggression was just too much. We couldn't keep up to a certain degree. It was just everywhere.
Yeah, I'm trying to like go at every possible location on the map, seeing drops here, there. It's hard to even know what to choose to commentate, and that is actually what is so difficult in the TVZ matchup right now for Zerg players. That is what's giving Zergs the problem, is it's not new crazy unit composition so much. It's that same standard mix, but using it in slightly unstandard ways.
Yeah. Being
able to identify, hey, you know what, I can actually just throw 4 tanks here and 12 Marines, and there's nothing he can do about it.
No, you're entirely right. So Delphi there just, it was a little bit, I mean, after the first game, we said that, you know, Bomber really got into his stride there and was able to just continue that aggression on and on and on, and Delphi just stretched so thinly. And on a map like Cloud Kingdom, where you're establishing a 4th and 5th so far away from one another, that gets really tricky.
Especially without Mutalisks. I mean, going with the Ling, Baneling, Ultralisk style, the only true way to hold those off is either with lots of Spore Spine, or by having your opponent in a super defensive position. And we saw that Delphi wasn't really able to put Bomber in that position at any point. I mean, what was so great about Bomber in responding is there was that big Ling Baneling bust at the start, and Bomber's whole build is geared up to do a timing push at 2-2. But Bomber kind of goes, oh, you just lost a bunch of Ling Baneling. I guess I'll just do a timing push with just Combat Shield Marines and tanks and manage to take down that 4th and even take down the 3rd base of Delphi.
That was fantastic indeed. So Bomber will advance on through that upper bracket. We shall throw it over to Jarrett Kale on the stage, and we'll be back in a bit.
Hi, I'm standing here with our winner of our first match of the day, our first match of the tournament, Startail Bomber. Congratulations. Did you expect to have so much difficulty with your opening opponent? Are you familiar with his playstyle?
1라운드부터 이렇게 어려운 선수를 상대할지 몰랐는데 2대1로 이겨서 다행인 것 같아요.
Well, he didn't expect to have such a tough opponent in the first round, and he's really happy that he won 2-1.
It's well played. And looking forward into the rest of the tournament, are you going to win it all?
우승할 생각이 자신 있는지?
제 생각보다 잘하는 선수가 너무 많이 와서 걱정이긴 한데 자신은 있어요.
Well, he's confident to win the whole tournament, but there are actually a lot of good players here, so it's going to be hard, but he will give it a try.
Well, good luck, have fun fighting. We're going to take a quick commercial break and come back with our next match.